So maybe by way of brief introduction, and then we'll get started. My name's Oliver Lindley. For those of you who haven't met me, Eric and I work super closely together at One Number. We are, I guess, One Number is technically a Tableau consultancy. We do everything from Tableau classes and courses that we built and put together, through to some office hours. So, if you're looking for some one-on-one training or mentorship, something like that, where it's super helpful to come alongside people. Or maybe it's problem solving, as opposed to like, hey, can you teach me how to do this? Sometimes it's just, hey, can you just do this for me? I've got this problem I need some help with. I don't know how to tackle it. Go for it. And then we've also done some full on, big scale projects for clients, some technical projects, which is super fun. And that's everything from education to HR to law, and everything in between. So it's really fun. And Tableau is what we're all about. And so we thought, hey, one of the things that a lot of us get asked often to do in Tableau is build text tables. In fact, I was working with a client a couple of weeks ago who said to me that she often gets super excited about the dashboards that she's built in Tableau, but her management frequently says to her, hey, can you just give me a text table? Just give me a bunch of text tables, print it out and put it on my desk. And she gets so disheartened, because she feels like she's got all these cool Tableau skills that she wants to show off. And more than that she's got real value that she can add to her company. And yet she feels like, oh, she's just being curtailed a little bit. So I feel for her so much, and maybe some of you can resonate with that. So what we're going to be tackling today are 12 tips to take your text tables from, a normal blank, cellular information to just spicing it up a little bit. So we're focusing on adding value to your text tables, right? Not just like formatting tips and tricks or something to make them look cool. This is really saying, hey, can we add value to a normal text table? Because we think that just providing information in a cellular format and leaving it gray is fine, but maybe there are some cool things that we can do.
Hey, Ollie, Eric here. Can you jump in for a second?
Go for it.
I'm not able to send the workbook link to everybody unless I'm an organizer. I'm only a panelist. Apparently, I'm not high enough on the hierarchy.
Yeah.
So either do you want to promote me to organizer, or you can send the workbook link for people to download.
Yeah, actually got it here. Thanks for flagging that, Eric.
Yeah, no worries. I realized I was just talking to you in an echo chamber on the chat. Okay, cool.
All good. Okay, everyone. So just a heads up. Thanks, Eric. This is the link to this dashboard that we're going to be working through today. So it is on Tableau Public, and you can access it there and download it if you want to build along. Okay, so that's where we're going. That link is in the chat. Cool. We'll dive into this now. Just one last encouragement. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll get to those if we've got some time.
Ollie, I'm going to butt in one more time and then I'll leave you alone. I won't be able to answer people's questions in the chat, I don't think, unless you make me an organizer. Do you want to try and do that? Like right click on my name in the attendee list and
yeah, got you.
Then I should be able to.
You've been promoted, Eric. You've been promoted. Enjoy your newfound privileges. Yeah.
Yeah, flowing.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Let's do this. So a little bit of context in our this whole workbook. We're going to be using this clinic operation data. So it's fairly simple, but that's the context. We're looking at some departments and different payment amounts coming in through departments. So perhaps something that we want to do at this point is to say, well, the actual measures, to see our measures by department description is interesting, but we might need a little bit more context. And the context is how many visits, like how many patients were these guys seeing? So perhaps injections, might be a very busy department, but surgery might be less busy, or x-rays might be less busy. Let's get some context to this value. So we're going to add a count as a discrete column in here. Now the count that we're going to use is, we've got two ways of doing this. Either we can count this like little account type. For our little thing, oh, this encounter number, just a heads up, is actually a description, and this is our count of visits, right? Encounter number, like a visit ID. So all I'm going to do is drop this onto rows. Now here's a little Tableau tip. If you're on a Mac and you hold down the Options key and drag, or if you're on a Windows and you hold down right click and drag and drop this in, you're going to get this little window that pops up straight away. And it just allows you to aggregate something as you drop it on, as opposed to dropping the field, click the drop down, go to the menu, select measure, and then count. So right now we get this beautiful bar chart because this is a continuous field. Continuous fields always give you headings and labels. So we're going to right click and make this discrete. And there you can see this is our count of our encounter numbers. Now, really what we would do is rename this a little bit. We could neaten it up and get this to be something like visits. And maybe this is the other way we could do it. We've got this little visits field and we could pull that through. So yeah, we could work that out. So that's a nice idea. Now we're seeing a little bit of context to our values, and we're able to see, okay, office visits is really, really busy, right? 48,000 encounters, whereas surgery, you've got 10,000 encounters, but it's by far our highest in terms of primary payments and probably overall payment too. Another nice thing that we can do is leverage tooltips. Text tables sometimes fall into the trap of being busy, and they can get busy simply because we're trying to show a lot of valuable information, but we've got to drill down to the exact values that we want to show. So utilizing our tooltips is a way to keep these pretty neat, but to still add in that extra value or context that doesn't need to display by default. So what I mean is, suppose we want to see, hey, how many CPTs do we have for each of these, primary payments, secondary payments, whatever it might be. So I'm going to drag, again, I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to Options and drag, and you can right click and drag on a Windows, and I'm going to drop this onto Tooltip. Let's go for a count. So we're seeing, hey, how many, actual procedures do we carry out? And then in that tooltip, you can see that count of CPT under the department description. So this is super useful if you have information that's not immediately necessary to be present at first glance, right? This is really useful for information that you're happy to say, hey, I actually want you to go and interact with the text table. I don't expect you to interact with my dashboards just as PDFs or as printouts. There's more information there for you. So that could be a nice encouragement to interact with the text table too. And you can do this with multiple fields. My one flag or piece of advice here would be, if you are going to utilize tooltips and you think there might be any degree of maybe like a lack of clarity, it's really nice to bring that into the tooltip. So perhaps count of CPT or secondary payments, we could just extrapolate a little bit on what that is, or maybe how we got to the number, something like that. That could just add a little bit more info. You're looking at this and you might think, well, this is all interesting, but let's add some totals. So there are two ways that we can add totals in Tableau. Actually, this is Tableau, so there are many, many ways to skin a cat. The first is to go over to this analytics pane. So the data pane over here, analytics pane, and drag in from this little totals menu, we can add some column grand totals. What about that? So we just drop them in. That's pretty easy. But if you want some more granular control over your totals, what you could do is go up to this analysis menu. If you're ever stuck in Tableau and you're trying to edit something that you've just dropped into your view, try the analysis menu first. You'll notice it's got things like stacking your marks, changing your totals and trend lines and table layouts and legends. A lot of stuff is in this menu. And although it's called analysis, it can sometimes feel a little bit intimidating. But you can see how many options we have here now that we didn't have from the analytics menu. So for instance, if we wanted to show, if we wanted to bump our column totals to the top instead, right? We now have that option and we can do that up at the top. The other interesting thing, I'm just going to point it out to you, it's not immediately applicable to us, is you can change this total aggregation to sum, average, min or max, basically saying something like, oh, if we had a discount percentage that we're tracking over time, maybe the way that we want that discount percentage totaled is not a sum of discount percentage, right? I don't want 5,000 as a discount percentage. Maybe I just want an average so I can see, okay, 23% was our average discount. That can be useful here too, just bringing that extra layer of analysis to a text table. Something that's also really useful, it's useful in this context, and especially as your text tables get busier or perhaps are populated with more values, is adding color into our text tables. I guess the quick test to see whether this is necessary is to say, what is the largest value in the second column? So if I ask you to do that, you have to scan all the values quickly, and we can see, okay, it's the 38,000. But as your table gets bigger and you have more and more values, it can become quite strenuous to our end users to have to sift through all those values unnecessarily. And color can draw our attention to the values of interest. And so what a highlight table is going to do is not just sort of highlight one or two values, it's creating this spectrum, a color spectrum of values from our lowest value all the way up to our highest value and coloring everything accordingly. So the way that this would work normally is we would have a measure on color. So we could say something like, hey, can we color this by our visits, right? So I can drag and drop visits onto color. You can see that the text is colored immediately. And so if I hit the drop down and change my mark to square, I'm going to indicate to Tableau, I actually want the cell colored. I want the square colored and not the text. So this is fine. That's normally how we do it. However, you'll notice, we'll leave this as a square. You'll notice we've got measure values here because each of these columns is its own measure: primary payment, secondary payment, other, and then an outstanding balance. So perhaps what would be most valuable would be to put measure values onto color like this. And now we can see, all right, in this table, this surgery primary payment is far and away our largest value. By clicking on this little color legend, double clicking on it, we can open up this color menu, and we can change the color palette here and choose a color that works well. But I think blue's fine. Maybe we could go for some step colors if we want. But as we apply that, I don't really think it's going to add anything to our text table right now. Okay. Sometimes when you create a highlight table like ours, you'll notice that we have a couple of outlier values, right? So in our case, we've got the surgery value, this office visits value, and at 2 million in comparison to the majority of values, which to me seem like they're less than 200,000, it's skewing the coloring of these cells so significantly that it's very, very difficult to work out what the actual values are in these cells, which kind of defeats the purpose of the highlight table. So what we're going to do now is, instead of coloring all of these by measure values, we're going to try and color these by each of these measures. So maybe let me back up very quickly and say a word about measure values. What measure values is doing, measure values is a Tableau generated value or Tableau generated field that is going to exist in all your data sets. So we didn't create this. This isn't in the data set itself per se. It's a Tableau generated value that sort of represents all the fields, all the measures in our view, or all the measures in our workbook, depending on the instance in which we use that measure values field. So in our case, what measure values is doing is it's saying, well, I'm representing all of the measures that are in our view, right, in this little measure values box. So the smallest value, 0, has got to be this value, which is a secondary payments value. So that's miscellaneous secondary payments, $0. And we know that this 2.1 million is this value, which is a primary payments surgery value, right? So what Tableau is doing is it's almost squashing all those values into a single field called measure values, and it's just coloring based off of that. What we're going to do is to indicate to Tableau, rather than coloring based off of measure values as a whole, right, as we build this out again, I want you to color for each of the measures. So what I'm going to do here is, this is just for clarity's sake, this is exactly the same chart as the one that we just built. So measure values on color and mark type on square. And now if I right click on my measure values, I've got this option to use separate legends. Beautiful. And so now you can see I've got our 4 color legends over here, and each column now has a lot of clarity, a lot more clarity than it had. Maybe to bring even more clarity and to say, hey, these values aren't related to one another, like this, it might be confusing. You just look at this and you think, this 306,000 is the same color as this 216,000, is this 2.1 million. So what we're going to do is just double click and give each of these its own color. And this is going to be a little bit gross, but bear with me. It is what it is. Okay, now at least it's clear to our end users, right, that these are not the same measure, and that each column is colored based off of the lowest to highest values within that column. So that's pretty nice. So that's measure values, right click, and use separate legends. And now we can combine them if you want to undo our hard work. Okay, so those are nice. Those are dealing with like a nice static text table that we've built out. But what we're going to do now is turn our attention to some parameters, and we're going to use these parameters to swap between 2 different dimensions in our text table. This is super useful in a couple of instances, and I'm sure this is not an exhaustive list, but maybe 2 examples that I could think of. The first is an example where you have limited space in your dashboard. And so what ends up happening is you only want one text table to show, and you have 2 dimensions that are related to one another. They're similar, you're not creating 2 completely different text tables for each one. So like you're not swapping between worksheets, but you're just wanting to swap out the actual dimension in the text table to save on some space rather than showing 2 text tables. That can be a nice way of doing it. The second example that I had, I can't think now, but anyway, I'm sure if it's really important, I'll remember it and we'll come back to it. So we're just going to use a parameter to swap between our 2 dimensions here. So I'm going to click the drop down and I'm going to create a parameter. This is our first step. Now, by way of clarity, a parameter is a variable that takes the place of a constant. So anytime you're thinking, hey, can I swap between X and Y and Z? Or can my end user choose this or that? Or can I vary this or that? Start with a parameter. It's probably the tool that you need, right? So anytime you're selecting between 2 options in Tableau, a parameter is probably the one that you need. By way of side note, and perhaps this is just personal preference, I find starting my parameters with a little P full stop, P dot, is really helpful. It makes it really easy to find them in calculated fields later on, and I'll show you how to do that. Sometimes I can't really remember, hey, is this thing a parameter or is this thing my calculated field? So by starting them with P dot, it's easy to find. Maybe you have more success than I do in working with parameters and calculated fields, but I offer it to you humbly. So let's start. P dot, and I'm going to say something like select a dimension. Let's think. Should we just do like an integer-based parameter? It's not going to be a huge deal, really. But I'm just going to create a list. I'm going to say 1 and 2. We're just going to swap between two options, and this is going to be department, and the second one is going to be CPT. Those are going to be our two options. So when creating a parameter, I haven't told Tableau that it needs to do anything yet. I haven't given it an instruction. All I've done is create the variable. So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to right click on my parameter and show it. And so now you can see this says department and this says CPT. Now you'll remember in the parameter itself, if I just edit this again, it has a value of 1 and 2 and a display as of department and CPT. So the display as is what we see, what Tableau literally displays on the surface. The value is what we need to reference in a calculated field in order to ascribe some kind of action or outcome to our parameter. If you're familiar with software development at all, you can kind of think of this as like the front end and the back end, right? Display as being the front end stuff. That's what our end users see and interact with. And the back end is the more technical stuff that the machine sees, you know? So that's what we're going to do. When we create a calculated field, we're going to reference the values, but we're going to see the display as. So let's click OK, and I'm going to create a calculated field. So we can call this calculation something like swap a dimension, and I'm going to use the case statement. Case statement very simply allows us to, just a side note here, this is where I think it's so easy to start with this P dot. I know I'm looking for a parameter, I've only got one built, and it's so easy to pull it up. Whereas going to my selected dimension, I don't know, it's probably just as easy, but this is what I end up doing. So now we're just going to ascribe an outcome or a value to each of these. So we're going to say when the parameter value is 1, then show me my department description. And when the parameter is 2, then give me CPT. And okay, what have I done? Ooh, our CPTs are integers, and our department description is a string. So I'm just going to convert this to a string. So this is just a little type conversion function in Tableau. We have string, we have integer, we have float, there are a whole bunch of these that we can use. So we're basically just saying, take our little numeric field, our integer field, and turn it into a string. So that Tableau is happy that no matter what it outputs with this calculated field, it's going to be a string. So let's hit OK. And I'm going to drop this swap a dimension field in place of this department description one. So let's drop it in. Okay. Do you notice that nothing changed? That's perfect. The only thing that changed was our title here. And that's because our parameter is hooked up to this department value right now. So we've said, remember, when 1, then department, and when 2, then CPT. So let's swap this to CPT. That looks good. Okay, so nice to be able to do that and to have the option of using one worksheet to show essentially 2 text tables. Very nice. Okay, we're going to do the same thing to swap between measures. I think this is super useful in a case like ours, where instead of seeing now this is a slightly different table. Instead of seeing our total cost over quarters, we're going to swap this and see our total visits over quarters. So here I'm going to change this to select a measure, and we're basically going to repeat the steps that we did in the last one. So value 1 and 2, and we're going to say, let's see, total cost as our first, and we'll do the other one is visits. Okay, nice. Now we can show this. And remember, there's nothing crazy going on here. We haven't actually told Tableau what to do. So let's create a calculated field and call this swap a measure. And again, we use our case statement. We'll say select a measure. When 1, then sum of total cost. And when 2, then visits. And okay. Now, this might look wrong, And if it does, well done. Visits is actually a calculated field. It's this little count distinct of our encounter ID. So every time someone visits, they get a visit ID, right? And so we're just count distincting the number of encounter IDs that we have to give us our visits. So that's all that's going on. So technically, these are both aggregated. So we're going to say OK. And I'll drop this swap a measure in place of the current measure. Okay, that looks good. And there's our visits. Very nice. Now we do have a little trick that entails us editing our positive and negative values to make one dollars and the other one not, and we'll send that tutorial around as a little roundup. Okay. Cool. We're getting there. So this is a super, super useful little, I guess it's a little trick, and it's sorting with a parameter. There are a couple of reasons why you might do this, and let me show you why I think this is so useful. So here we've got our department descriptions, and we've got the number of visits. Okay. Currently, we have a descending sort, so I'm going to right-click on department description, and I'm going to go to sort. So currently, we have a field-based sort, and it's by visits. That's pretty cool. But we could put in our own sort. So we could say, hey, I want to sort this by sum of total cost descending. So currently, what this sort is saying is from top to bottom, this is the order of total cost. So surgery is the highest total cost, then office visits, then x-rays, blah, blah. But the view is showing our department description by our number of visits. Okay, that's cool. However, when you present this to your end users, they will have the option of clicking this little sort button at the top to sort it descending based on the measure in your view, or make it ascending, or cancel the sort. And now your custom sort that you just popped on to the department description is gone, right? So that's really frustrating. Now they've undone your hard work. So what we can do is we can kind of hard code a sort into this view without really changing the way that it looks. And more than that, we're going to use a parameter to swap between different sort options. So this is really, really useful in a number of situations. So currently, this is a little bar chart. This will work perfectly fine for a text table as well. And that's exactly why we've got it in here. Let's make it standard. So for the sake of clarity, I'm going to start with doing it on the bar chart, and then we'll just drop it onto the text table, and we'll take it from there. Okay. So I'm going to make this sort by parameter. Basically, my sort by parameter is just saying choose a measure you want to sort by. So I'll make this an integer and make it a range. We've got 3 options, and they're going to be our visits. It's going to be our total cost. And I think our third is outstanding balance. Okay, very nice. So those are our 3 little options. We can click OK and show it. Okay, nice. Maybe let's make that a single value list. So those are our 3 options. Now I'm going to create my calculated field, and this is going to be my sort by field. And I'm going to say, in the case of my P sort, when 1, then, and now we could say something like this. Okay, let me show you what option 1 would be. Then visits. When 2, then total cost. Okay, and when 3, then we could do outstanding balance. And I think our visits is going to mess this up. So we're going to say encounter number. This isn't even a measure. Okay, let's just do this. So basically, my little visits was messing us up because it's aggregated, and I didn't want to aggregate everything, but now it'll be easier to just aggregate everything. Sum of outstanding balance. Okay, Tableau's happy. We're going to say okay. Basically, this is just saying when it's each of these values, just output the relevant value. We're going to hit okay. I originally tried, and maybe you've also tried, to sort like this, right? So you've got your little field. I just drop it onto detail, so it's in my view somewhere. Perhaps that's not even necessary. And I right-click on department description. We're going to add a sort. I'm going to make this field-based, descending, and the field that I want is my sort by. So let me go and grab that. So I'm going to call this sort by, and my aggregation is custom, correct, okay. So this looks okay. And as I sort of click through, yeah, that seems to work. But again, the minute your end user clicks this button, things get undone because now it's a custom sort again. So even though our sort by worked, the minute our end user tries to take things into their own hands, it breaks. So there's a better way of doing this. And that better way is to use a table calculation called rank. So instead of saying, hey, I want you to output this aggregated value, we're actually going to say, I want you to output the rank of this aggregated value. Now, what rank does is it literally just gives a rank, like think of gold medals, medals in the Olympics, you know, gold, silver, bronze, or first place, second place, third place, all the way down from the highest value to the smallest value. And so each one's going to get a number from 1 through however many values you have. In our case, 1 through 11. So what we're going to say is just rank these guys based off of their, you know, the actual value in our view. So count distinct of encounter number or total cost or whatever it might be. So we're going to wrap each of these in a rank function. Rank, and rank. Okay, nice. So let's hit OK. And now again, instead, here's the trick. Instead of dropping this somewhere in the field, right-clicking and saying sort, what I'm going to do is put the sort by on my rows shelf, and I'm going to make this discrete, right? So instead of continuous, I made it discrete. What does that do? Well, this is currently outputting the rank, right? The rank of the count distinct of encounter number, or basically giving us the rank of the number of visits. So you can see that's working in our view right here. If I change that to total cost, now this is ranking by sum of total cost. And if I click outstanding balance, it's now ranking by the sum of outstanding balance. What's pretty cool is the minute you drop this sort by before department description, it's actually going to influence the sort. Do you see? So here's our total cost. Here's our outstanding balance, 1 through 11, right? So total cost, 1 through 11, visits, 1 through 11, outstanding balance, 1 through 11. And there's actually no option now for me to click a little sort button at the top of this column, which is super cool because it's all sorted by this rank. And if you wanted to present this, you want to make it nice, you would right click on the sort by and uncheck show header. So it looks super normal. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z to get our sort by back, and I want to show you in the context of a text table what this would look like. So here we go, here are little sorts everywhere, very nice. And we just right click on our sort by and uncheck show header. Cool. Very, very nice. One little side note here is I would definitely say make it clear to your end users what this is being sorted by at any one time. So you could always drop this, a little subheading in here or something to say sorted by, and then we can insert our parameter. So this little insert button, and I'm going to choose our p.sort. I'll just make it little so it kind of hides out the way. Sorted by visits. Nice. Maybe we should make this bold too so we can really see what's going on. Sorted by visits, by total cost, by outstanding balance. Okay, so this is probably a little bit bold and a little bit big for what we need, but you get the picture. Something that really indicates to your end user or keeps it top of mind what's going on. And we maybe don't leave it to the parameter itself, but whatever, up to you. Okay, so those are our 8 first top tips, and I'm really excited to show you the next few. But I wanted to take a quick moment just to say that if this is at all interesting to you, we have a bunch of classes and courses that we've put together to help people ramp up their Tableau knowledge. So like I said, both Eric and I are working with Tableau in very technical situations with clients frequently, and we feel like we are able to take that real world knowledge and apply it to these courses and classes that we've built. Mystery to Mastery 1 and Mystery to Mastery 2 are comprehensive Tableau classes for beginners all the way through to expert level. And those are really broad and I think super robust practical classes. Mastering Tableau Calcs 1 is for anyone who wants to level up their calculations. And we kind of felt like there was scope for us to dive into sets, parameters, and LODs in more detail, because those are like the big 3, aren't they, of calculations in Tableau. But more than that, we kind of felt like there were so many real world tips and tricks and hard-earned bits of information that we wanted to share with you to use these well and really build some super powerful stuff in Tableau. So we're excited about that class. And you can book each one individually, but we launched this training passport a couple of months ago, and we've been so excited by the reception that it's got. Basically, it gives you access to all our classes for 50% off is what it works out to be. But it throws in an extra office hour with Eric or with me. You get access to all our class recordings for an extra 2 weeks after you're done, so you don't have to, just shove everything into your brain and leave hoping that it sticks. And you've got access to us. And I think it's super, super cool to sort of see the same faces coming through our classes, really build a relationship and understand your context well as we're going through these classes. But I also know that for many of you, the reality is you don't necessarily need a whole class. Perhaps it's a situational thing that you're needing some help with, or you've got budget and you need a little Tableau manpower, whatever it might be. We do have these office hours where we can just swoop in for an hour or two and help provide a little bit of training for a team or build a project. We've got this dream of what we want to build in Tableau. We've got budget. Can you guys build it for us? We love that stuff. So if there's any way that we can help in the future, please do let us know. It's super fun, and we're really excited about these classes that we put together. And I think this office hour offering is wonderful because you don't need to buy 40 hours up front and use it in a week. You can buy an hour here, an hour there. You can buy a batch and use them as you like. And we've really seen some cool fruit come from that. Okay. So what about this one? We're going to look at changing colors with a parameter. So it's kind of similar to what we've looked at, but this is using color in a different way. So instead of changing the values, we're going to do something like this. Our select a measure parameter is showing us, let's edit this quickly, is showing us our total costs and our visits. So let's drop this down and make it a single value list. So what if we did something like this? What if we took that same field, our swap a measure field, and we drop that onto color? We change our mark type to square to indicate that this is a highlight table, that the cells should be colored, not the text. And now when I swap to visits, boom, so nice. So now that actual highlight is changing. What we could do as well is to say, we could put that text in here too in our tooltip. So you can see we've got that swap a measure 504 down there. This calculation one I actually think is total cost, and for clarity's sake, let's swap it out. Maybe what we want to do with this swap a measure is to replace it with our p swap a measure select a measure. So it's the actual parameter value that comes through. Do you see that? So the parameter value should be this one. So we could say something like visits, right? 3,000, swap it out to total cost. I'm just looking right down at the bottom there of our, oh, this is total cost on here already. But yeah, you see the idea, right? That by utilizing this parameter, we're actually able to create a pretty dynamic tooltip and a dynamic highlight table as we go. Very nice. Okay, here's something that I think can be super, super useful and lets you tell a story even better at times than a highlight table does. We're going to look at highlighting the minimum or maximum values in a table, but you can really set this up to highlight any value that you like. All this is going to require from us is a calculated field. So I'm just going to call this min/max value. And I'm going to say something like this. There are a number of ways that we could set this up, but I'm going to use a window function. Now, window functions, if you filter this little Tableau syntax down to table calculations and scroll all the way down, you'll see we've got a load of window functions. And these window functions are table calculations that basically allow us to aggregate against our already aggregated measures. So we can say something to Tableau like, hey, can you show me the max sum of total cost, right? This is basically what I want to do. I want to say the max sum of total cost equals my sum of total cost. And that's going to give me a true or false, but you see Tableau's going, whoa, you've aggregated this once, right? You've got sum of total cost. You cannot max a sum, which is fair. You can't max a sum. But with window max, you can do that exact thing. You can say window max. You can say, I want you to look through the window and find the maximum of the sum of total cost. Why does this work? Because all table calculations must be aggregated. Do you remember when we did the ranks? We did rank sum of this, rank counterstinct of that. So we're going to say window max sum of total cost equals our sum of total cost. Okay, and we can literally just make this a true or false and say change this one to window min. Okay, and click apply and drop this onto color. Make this square. So I'm going to speak to this little color legend now, but I just want to show you, in the past, our highlight tables have been fine because we've had measures on color. Tableau can do highlight tables with measures really easily. But measures, highlight tables with dimensions are a little bit trickier. And our min-max value is just true or false. So what we're going to do is a little workaround, and I'm going to create a calculated field called 1, and it just contains my max of 1. That's it. 1, max of 1. I'm going to change my mark type to a bar, and we'll do this again so you'll get it. But I'm going to change this to a bar, and I'm going to put this 1 on size. And then I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to click on color and drop in a little border. Maybe we do like a white border or something. Okay. You might be thinking that looks terrible. It's because we've got some falses and some trues. And notice how the trues are looking a little bit odd, right? So our trues and our falses are running table across. So I actually need Tableau to read this table across and down, or table down and across. One of these that considers all the values, if that's what I want, and I presume that is. So now you can see, okay, so what's happened so far? Where are we at this stage? At this stage, this is saying, cool, you're going to have a true if it's minimum or if it's the maximum. So there's our max, and all the zeros are min. So why don't we just get a value for each of these, some kind of output. So we could say if the window max sum of total cost equals our sum of total cost, then max, and then let's take out our or and say else if, window min, then min. And okay, sorry, Tableau. Let's apply that. Okay, so we've got some zeros, we've got our highest. Yeah, that's fine. And then we do have a null here, that's fine. We could add another value like else, I don't know, I'm blanking, so we'll just leave it. Here's one small tip as well. If you do want to create these values that you only want to highlight this or that, you might have some nulls that appear. Something that I like to do, just to have in the back pocket, is this transparent color palette. Maybe this is a resource I can send out a little bit later, how to set a custom color palette in Tableau. What this allows me to do is to actually say, hey, for this null, I want you to just make it transparent, right? So I can leave my logic as is. I've got my mins, I've got my maxes, and then I've got my transparent for my nulls. And I can set my little borders around my cells, and that actually looks okay. That looks perfectly fine. So that works nicely. So we've got our maxes, we've got some mins, and some nulls. Okay, we're going to do something similar and highlight our values above or below our average with colors. So I'm going to create a calculated field. We're going to do something super similar, and this is going to be above or below. Don't hate me, everyone, with my syntax. I'm leaving it. I stand by what I've written. Okay, so if it's above, so we're going to say something like this. If my sum of, not of total, of total cost is greater than, is greater than my window average, sum of total cost, then above average. Else if my sum of total cost is below my window average, sum of total cost, then let's say it's below our average. And parenthesis. Okay, so is it above our average or is it below our average? Now again, our window function here is saying you need to check through our window what the average of the entire window is. Now, because it's a table calc, the window is what we're going to change with our scope and direction. So we're going to say, I want a table across and down, checking all the values, or just for each column, or just for each row, whatever it might be. But using this, we're averaging the sum of total costs, right? We're like aggregating an aggregate, which is really nice. So satisfying. So let's hit OK. Let's drop this onto color. Again, we're going to make this a square. Because this is true or false, we've got this idea. And so we're going to put our little 1 onto size and make this a bar. Okay. Very nice. Colors. Should we just do this like light gray situation again and do our transparent nulls? So let me say, the other way that we could do this would be to say something like, if my sum of total cost is greater than my window average sum of total cost, then sum of total cost, right? Then output that sum of total cost. That could also work. So like I said, there are other ways of working out this exact coloring, and it's up to you to say, do I want this, nice solid color, saying these are all above the average, these are all below, and we could work on our colors so that they're not orange and red. But you could play around with whether you want the value outputted or whether you want this above average and below average, a string value outputted. That could be one way of thinking about it. Okay. For our last little example here, I think this is a really fun one. We're going to highlight a top or bottom n values with a parameter. So what does that mean? It means I want you to be able to highlight the number of values that you want to highlight. So highlight 10 values, highlight 20 values, highlight 50 values. And those values should be the top 10 values by total cost, or the top 20 values by total cost. Or you should be able to swap it and say, hey, show me the bottom 20 values by sum of total cost. That's what we're going to do. This is super fun. We're going to create a couple of parameters to get us there. And I think this is a really nice way of getting our end users to interact with text tables in a way that has most of the time been reserved for bar charts or some kind of chart where you're actually changing the number of values that you're displaying. Here we're changing the number of values that we're highlighting. So let's do this. Let's create a parameter. Our first one is going to be called top or bottom. And I'm going to make this a string because, here's why I want this to be a string. The rank function, let me write this over here. The rank function syntax looks like this. It says rank, and then we have aggregate measure. And then here I can add a little comma, and I can indicate that I want this to be ascending, meaning I want it ranked from the smallest value being rank 1 all the way down to the highest value. So this would be like an ascending sort, right? Smallest to biggest. Or DESC, descending, from biggest value to smallest value. Rank by default ranks on descending. So you don't need to specify it. But for us, we want to say, hey, I want you to choose whether you want to rank top to bottom or bottom to top. So we're going to play around with that little DESC or ASC value to get this to work. So our value needs to be exactly what rank wants from us. So this is going to be ASC and DESC. Those are the two values that rank wants. And the display is going to be bottom and top. Okay. So that's parameter number 1. Let's show this. And so that we can see all of it, I'll make it a single value sort. And then I'm going to create another parameter, and I'm going to call this our top n. This is going to be n values to highlight, something like that. And this is going to be a integer, right? So you can select any number of values that you want. I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to show this. Okay. Now let's hook this all up. Let's put this all together using our calculated field. And this is going to be called values to highlight. And we're going to say something like, show me, I want to see the rank. The rank, what do I want? Sum of total cost. And here's our first parameter. So this is going to be P dot top or bottom, okay, and this needs to be less than or equal to our values to highlight, right? So what is this going to say? If we take out the parameters and we drop in some actual values here, this could say something like, hey, this is my rank sum of total cost, ascending, let's get that out. Ascending is less than or equal to 5, for instance, right? This is the kind of thing that we've just built with our little values. And we've subbed in our parameter in place of the ASC. We've subbed in a parameter in place of our 5, which is our integer. So this is going to give us a little true or false. which is really nice. We can hit OK, put our values to highlight on color. And now we're going to go through the same little trick. So let's make it a bar. I'm going to drop my 1 on size. I'm going to make this nice and big. Perfect. I'll put a light gray border. And let's show this color legend. Oops. Let's edit these colors so I can get my nulls back. Obsessed. So null. Let's do this and apply. False. If it's less than, I literally don't care. I only want my true. So let's just make it all like that. And now what's pretty cool is, okay, hang on, pause. Something looks a little bit funky. What's going on is Tableau is currently ranking these table across. Do you see that? Each row has a bottom 1 value. So what we're going to need to do now is change this, the scope and direction here, to across and then down, or down and then across. That's fine. Something that considers the whole table. So our bottom 1 value is all these zeros, right? If we change it to our top 1, it's this one. If we change it to our top 15 values, these are our top 15. What about our bottom 15? Right, like that. Maybe we can sub in these values here. So we could say something like, we should probably insert our P top or bottom. So that'll be our top. Let's insert our next parameter, which is going to be values to highlight. Top 10 values by total cost, like this. Bottom 15 values by total cost. Top 15 values by total cost. Beautiful. I think that's a really nice, fun way of adding in another layer of interactivity and interest into our text tables. You know, this is really like taking it to the extreme, and maybe with some clever parameter play, we could, you know, hook up some other outputs as well that we wanted to in here. But that's the idea, right? That you're taking a normal text table and you're asking yourself, what questions might people ask? And can I create these tools to help them to get there? So maybe people are wanting to know, what are the top 20 values by total cost? What are our bottom 5 values by total cost? And instead of filtering this down, I'm keeping the full picture and I'm letting you just highlight those values that you want to see. I think that's a really, really wonderful tool. So those are our 12 tips for text tables, really awesome text tables. I'm sure there are loads more. We've got the recording that we're going to send out to you that hopefully is going to be useful. You can come back to it. But we just wanted to say a huge thank you for coming to join us. It's so much fun having these events. And yeah, give us a follow on LinkedIn, on YouTube. We've got lots of these kinds of tips and tricks. And if there's anything else that we can help with, you're welcome to pop a question in the chat. Send me an email, oliver.lindley@onenumber.biz or eric.parker@onenumber.biz. And from our side, all the best. Thank you so much for joining us. Awesome.